Marcus Webb hadn't slept more than 4 hours in 3 days. That was just Tuesday. He was 41 years old, running on black coffee and the kind of stubborn love that doesn't ask for anything in return, raising 3 7-year-old children, alone in a world that moved too fast and forgave too little. Lily, Lucas, and little Leo, triplets who had come into the world on the same October morning that their mother, Dana, had left it. A brain aneurysm, the doctors said, as if labeling the lightning bolt that had struck his life could somehow make it hurt less. It couldn't. Nothing could. But 3 small faces had looked up at him from their hospital bassinets that night, and Marcus had made a silent promise to a woman who could no longer hear him, that he would be enough. For all of them, every single day. 3 years had passed since they'd moved from Chicago to a quieter town in rural Tennessee, trading the noise of the city for the slower rhythm of a place where people still waved from their porches. Marcus worked remotely as a civil engineer, fitting conference calls between school pickups and bedtime stories, between scraped knees and science projects, between nightmares and breakfast. He drove a dented blue minivan with a cracked rear bumper that read, in Lily's crayon handwriting on a piece of duct tape, "Dad's taxi." He'd never replaced it. It made the kids laugh every time they climbed in. It was a Thursday evening in early March when everything changed. The sky over Highway 70 had turned the color of a bruise, and Marcus was 40 minutes from home with all 3 kids buckled in the back seat, returning from a parent-teacher conference at their school. Lily had fallen asleep against the window. Lucas was quietly building something with magnetic tiles on his lap. Leo, the youngest by 4 minutes and the loudest by every measure, was explaining to no one in particular why dinosaurs were better than superheroes. "Dad," Lucas said suddenly, pressing his face to the glass. "There's someone on the side of the road." Marcus almost didn't stop. He thought about it. The honest truth is, he almost didn't. It was getting dark. The kids were tired, dinner wasn't made, and he had a 7 o'clock call with a contractor that he absolutely could not miss. There were 100 reasons to keep driving and tell himself that someone else would stop. Someone without 3 kids in the car. Someone better positioned for the moment. But then Leo said, "Dad, she's on the ground." Marcus pulled over before he'd even consciously decided to. The woman was lying half off the gravel shoulder, one arm stretched out toward the road, as if she'd been reaching for something when she fell. She was older, maybe late 60s, silver-haired, and wearing a blue cardigan over a floral blouse, the kind of outfit that made Marcus think of someone's grandmother headed to Sunday church. Her car, a pale green sedan, sat with its hazard lights blinking weakly a few yards ahead. He told the kids to stay inside, locked the doors, jogged over. She was breathing, but barely. Her lips had a bluish tint, and her pulse, when he pressed 2 fingers to her wrist, was faint and irregular. He'd taken a CPR certification course 5 years ago, when Dinah was pregnant, one of those precautionary things he'd done and hoped he'd never use. He called 911, stayed on with the dispatcher, and kept the woman on her side the way the operator instructed, placing his folded jacket under her head. He talked to her the entire time. He didn't know if she could hear him, but he talked anyway, the same way he talked to his kids when they were sick. Low and steady and full of the kind of calm he had to manufacture from scratch. "You're going to be okay," he told her. "Help is coming. You just hold on." From inside the minivan, 3 small faces were pressed against the glass. The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. The paramedics were efficient and serious, and one of them told Marcus, before loading her in, that he had very likely saved her life by stopping when he did. The woman had suffered a cardiac event. A few more minutes without intervention, without someone keeping her airway clear and her body stable, and the outcome would have been different. Marcus stood on the shoulder of Highway 70 and watched the ambulance pull away, and his hands were still shaking when he got back in the van. "Is she going to be okay, Daddy?" Lily asked. She'd woken up somewhere in the middle of it all. "I think so, Bug," Marcus said. "I really think so." Leo leaned forward against his booster straps. "You saved her." "I just stopped," Marcus said. "That's all." He meant it as a small thing. He had no idea in that moment how large it actually was. Her name was Eleanor Voss. He learned that 3 weeks later, when a letter arrived at his house, he still didn't know how she'd found his address, though he suspected it involved some determined phone calls to the county sheriff's office, which had taken a report that night. The letter was handwritten on cream-colored stationery in the careful, looping cursive of a woman who had grown up when penmanship still mattered. "Dear Mr. Webb," it began. "You don't know me, but I know you. I know you have 3 children. I know you were tired and busy and had somewhere to be. I know that most people drove past me that night before you stopped. I counted the headlights from the ground. I was more conscious than anyone realized. And I know that you talked to me, and that your voice was the kindest thing I had heard in a very long time. I would like to meet you if you'll allow it. And I would like to meet those children of yours, if they're willing. I have something I'd like to say to all of you, something I should have found a reason to say to someone a long time ago." Marcus showed the letter to the kids over dinner. Lucas read it aloud, slowly and carefully, the way he did everything. Lily immediately said they should go. Leo said she sounded really fancy and wanted to know if she had a dog. They drove to her home on a Saturday morning in late March. Eleanor Voss lived in a white farmhouse outside of Cookville, set back from the road behind a row of old oak trees that were just beginning to bud. She was waiting on the porch when they pulled in, standing straight, color in her cheeks, blue cardigan traded for a pale yellow one. She looked like a different woman from the one Marcus had knelt beside on the highway, and yet something in her eyes was exactly the same, clear and searching and deeply, quietly grateful. She hugged Marcus for a long time without saying anything. Then she crouched down to the kids' level, all 3 of them watching, her with the solemn curiosity of children who sense that a moment is important without being told why. "Which one of you spotted me first?" she asked. "Lucas," Lily said instantly. "Leo told Dad you were on the ground," Lucas added, generous in the way of children who don't yet understand competition. Eleanor looked at Leo. "Then you may have saved my life, young man." Leo considered this very seriously. "I want a dog too," he said. "Just so you know." Eleanor laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from somewhere deep and unexpected, the kind that surprises the person it comes from. And just like that, whatever formal strangeness might have existed between them dissolved completely. She made them lunch, grilled cheese and tomato soup, because she'd asked Marcus ahead of time what the kids liked and had written it down. Over the meal, she told them about herself in the easy, unhurried way of someone who had been waiting a long time for the right audience. She'd been a school teacher for 38 years in 3 different states. She'd raised 2 sons after her husband passed young, much the way Marcus was raising his 3. She'd retired to Tennessee to be near her younger son, but he'd moved overseas for work, and the farmhouse had grown quiet in a way she'd stopped noticing until she nearly didn't wake up to hear it anymore. Loneliness, she told Marcus quietly, when the kids had gone to explore the back porch, is a health crisis that nobody puts on a billboard. He understood that more than she knew. What happened next didn't happen all at once. It wasn't a single dramatic gesture, but something slower and more sustaining. The kind of change that builds itself out of repeated small choices. Eleanor began driving to Marcus's house on Wednesday afternoons. The one afternoon a week he had back-to-back calls and the kids needed someone present. She helped with homework at the kitchen table. She read to them. She taught Lily how to make pie crust from memory. She told Lucas, who worried about everything, that the best engineers in the world were the ones who thought through all the problems first. She listened to every single one of Leo's dinosaur theories with complete, genuine interest. And Marcus, for the first time in years, began to exhale. He hadn't realized how much of himself he'd been holding tightly in place, how many plates he'd been spinning with no one standing beside him to spot the wobble. He hadn't let himself feel the weight of it because there was no room to feel it. The kids needed him upright and functioning, and so that's what he'd been. But Eleanor saw it, in the quiet way of a woman who'd spent 4 decades, reading children and the parents, who loved them past their own limits. She saw it and she simply showed up. By summer, she was at their dinner table on Sundays. By fall, the kids were calling her Nana L, and she was keeping a drawer in their kitchen, stocked with butterscotch candies and the particular brand of coloured pencils that Lily liked best. Marcus had stopped on the side of Highway 70 for a stranger, because 3 small voices had been watching from the back seat, and somewhere, even in his exhaustion, he'd known that what he did in that moment would be something they carried. He'd wanted them to see a person who stops. He hadn't expected that the stopping would save him too. That's the thing about kindness. The real, inconvenient costs you something kind. You think you're giving it. You think you're the one with something to offer. But it circles back around in ways you cannot predict or plan for, in the form of a woman in a yellow cardigan sitting at your kitchen table, telling your son that worrying about things means you care enough to pay attention. Some gifts don't come wrapped. Some of them come lying on the side of the road, waiting for someone willing to pull over. Marcus Webb pulled over, and all 4 of them, a tired father, a woman who had nearly run out of time, and 3 children who had come into the world the same day they lost their mother, found something they hadn't known they were looking for: each other.